potentially what could have happened too is that she did stab herself, passed out, like in that state of like between awake and unconscious. She imagined the second act with the Black Swan, and then maybe kind of went back, sort of woke up or came back to like consciousness in a way, realized that she stabbed herself, and maybe like did start prepare her makeup and stuff, and then like passed out again or something like this. And then that's when they discover her and take her to the hospital.
There's a theory that Nina's mom, Erica, throughout the movie, every single time she's in the movie is a hallucination. Her entire character is a hallucination to Nina. Some things to back this up. In every scene, the mom is wearing the same exact thing. She's wearing the black shirt with the same pants. Every scene. And the movie takes place over months.
Any scene with Lily is very confusing because Lily is also, once again, definitely a real character. She clearly interacts with other dancers. She is interacting with Toma. And then there's also the fact that in different scenes, like for example, the first time after they spend the night together, quote unquote, Nina interacts with Lily in the studio and Lily's just like, no, I did not come back with you last night. So there is definitely moments where Nina realizes that she's imagining scenes with Lily when Lily is not there. And so that's once again happened after she quote unquote murders Lily, and then Lily comes out and is like, oh my god, you did so good. I think Nina is jealous of Lily, especially because Toma keeps pointing out how she is and that she knows how to let go, and she's so, like, she's everything that Nina's trying to be so that she can be the Black Swan.
You can hear the crowd chanting as the white lights come in to end the movie. They go from applauding to saying, Nina, Nina, Nina. What's up, everyone? This time I sit down with my wife, Julie, to discuss a movie that she's been trying to get me to watch since we started dating, which is Black Swan. I finally watched the film. I rewatched it to prepare for this episode. It is poignant, it's dark, it's anxiety-provoking, and we get into everything that either fascinated us or frustrated us about the film. We explore the possible meaning behind Nina's hallucinations and her continuing descent into madness. We dive into conspiracy theories about the film harder than Nina dove into Lily's muff during the post-club bedroom scene. We dissect the character of Erica, Nina's mother, and whether or not she even exists. Thank you to my wife Julie for her excellent co-hosting performance on this episode, not only as a viewer of Black Swan, but as a former ballet dancer herself. And without further ado, please enjoy this wide-ranging, deep-diving conversation about Black Swan.
Can you call action when we start?
You know that many directors, and I found this because it came up when I was searching for a clip of Black Swan. There's a famous director. It's not Darren Aronofsky. Oh no, sorry. This was not a director. This was Christopher Walken.
Okay.
And he was saying that the death of acting is the words action and cut. Because when you say action, it sort of takes the actor out of it, and it's supposed to insinuate that you're supposed to start acting now.
Sure.
But he says often on sets, the good directors will sort of just like say, go when you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
And you take a second or a minute, and then you just go into the scene. There's no like,
No,
but a lot of
fair
amateur
enough.
directors will do the action. And then he said earlier in his career, he'd have people that go cut, and then they like slap the thing in front of his face, and he's always like gentle, like I don't want to hear that because it's not part of the scene, like I only want to see things part of the scene. So like this notion that you just start and stop, he said, destroys a lot of good scenes.
No, okay, well, it doesn't have to be an action and cut. Then it can be just like, we're starting around now.
What if I started with a sip? It's a
Is
gentle
that
sip.
the starting sip?
It could be, or this could be it.
Well,
then
that
every-
was it, folks.
but
Thank
then
you for tuning in.
But then every time I take a sip, you have to wonder, am I starting again? Am I stopping it? But only the director's mind knows.
This is my least favorite part when podcasting with you, is I'm just like, at what moment do I switch on my podcast behavior?
So that's interesting. Why do you feel the need to switch on a podcast behavior? What is it that you're trying to present now that you weren't before?
I mean, the same that like when you go out in public, like when you are like the difference is like 5 minutes ago we were alone in our apartment where we've been living together for a long time, and we have behaviors like using the bathroom in front of each other, this kind of things, which I would not do with a random person, although girls do tend to do that.
Were you planning on using the bathroom on camera?
No, but as in, like for example, yawning, I yawn with my mouth fully wide in front of you. But like
Okay.
if in presence of other people, I would put my hand in front of my mouth.
All right. So from this point forward, yawn as if the podcast is rolling.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Today, we are talking about the film Black Swan.
Only 10 years late.
Only 10 years late. I think it's over 10 years late.
No, it came out in 2015, I think.
Did it? This is the one thing I didn't look
research.
up. Is 2010. I was going to say.
2010, so it's been 15 years.
It's been 15 years.
Wow.
And I was going to say, so this film came out when we were both in high school. I think you were still doing ballet at that time in 2010.
Yeah, I went to see it in theaters.
So yeah, you were more interested in it. I just did not go to see this movie in theaters, never saw it when it came out to streaming. And then within the past 2 or 3 years, you've recommended it to me a bunch of times, at least 4 or 5 times. And I was been like, oh, like it's a ballet movie. I don't really feel like watching it. Like I've heard good things. Darren Aronofsky did The Social Network, a bunch of other good movies, but I was just like, I don't think
Requiem for a Dream, which I think is even more an important work than The Social Network. I actually did not know he did The Social Network.
Yeah, he did The Social Network. Oh no, so I'm messing up. That was David Fincher.
I was about to say very different vibes with The Social Network. That would be like very different style.
I went down. So when I was preparing for this, obviously my algorithm was Black Swan, and then it turned into directors just commenting on the movies that they made. So I've been looking at like so many different director videos that they all just started to merge together. So I saw one about like David Fincher and Armie Hammer, and I was like thinking that was Darren Aronofsky, but it's not. But he's made a ton of good movies. You've recommended it a few times in the past few years. We've never watched it together. And then last week, we watched it together. Me for the first time, you for whatever. The fourth time. What made you want me to see this movie?
I think, well, we both enjoy thrillers. And this, for me, is kind of like the quintessential psychological thrillers. There's a lot of different layers going on. So obviously, I've been very passionate about ballet my whole life, pretty much. And I was extremely invested, in particular when this came out, as I was potentially training to go the professional route, which didn't work out. But so I was really intrigued by this movie, and in particular, and we'll get into it with the story of the Black Swan, is those two sides of a personality. And so it's exploring, the psyche in that sense as well. So it's just like, it's got all these like really nice parallels. Natalie Portman puts an incredible performance on, which got her the Oscar for Best Actress that year. And I'm obviously a huge fan of the director. I've not seen that many movies. I'm also a huge fan of Requiem for a Dream. I think he's just really great at psychological thrillers and just disturbing imagery and all this. And so I thought you'd really enjoy it for all of that.
Is there anything that you remember about your reaction to the first time seeing Black Swan, being there, emotionally taking all that in, and then comparing that to your fourth or fifth time watching it last week? Have you changed your opinion on it? Does that initial reaction still hold?
I think there was a few scenes where I was shocked. I'm like, it's been 15 years, so it's like, if you have not seen it, go watch it and then come back to listen to this. But like the hospital scene, for example, I thought was really disturbing. The scene when she goes home with all the paintings, like screaming, things like that I just like really gut wrenching and really disturbing to watch. And How old were we in 2015?
So 2011, I graduated high school.
I
So you were
graduated in
you
2014,
were
22.
17.
No,
Oh,
2015?
2015. Yeah,
Yeah, 22.
22. Yeah.
So I was like also even like this is a little scary. Like I'm not sure I want to go see it in the theater by myself. So I found it like a bit scary the first time, and obviously I had no idea what to expect. Well, now I know what's coming. So I think the fear factor has been a bit taken out and the element of surprise has been taken out, but I can still really appreciate the like how well they've kind of like managed to dive into the world of ballet and really highlight the um what would be the word for it? Like the bad aspects of it, like the toxic parts of
Mm.
ballet, and really like played on those elements and extrapolated them. And I just think it's beautifully shot, beautifully done. Um, and despite the element of intrigue being no longer there for me, I know I'm still going to be watching it for several more times in my life.
There were a few moments in the film where you pointed out to me, this is real ballet shit. Like this is not
Mhm.
just part of the cinematic storytelling
Mhm.
over the top. Like this actually happens in ballet.
Mhm.
Do you remember a few of those points where you pointed that out? Because I have some in mind.
Well, so I know that you were surprised by some aspects, and then the following morning, we're just watching like a day in the life of a ballerina, but um, and we're comparing this like ballet to baseball, which was your athletic path and a big part of your life as well, and just the consistency and that ballet has, that it's like it's 8 hours a day every day. You have to watch what you eat. Like it can go into um eating disorders very easily. Like eating disorders are very common in the ballet world. Not every ballerina has an eating disorders, but
Yeah.
most ballet dancers have had some form of an issue with food at some point in their careers.
And Nina throws up a few times in the movie. Natalie
Right.
Portman's character.
So like you have to be like this skinny thing, and obviously as well it's not just purely about you, like you're on your tippy toes, so like how much weight you put on your toes will affect your performance. You're being lifted by other male
Yeah.
dancers, so like there's also all of that matters, and you're comparing yourself to others constantly. Your thighs are never thin enough, your stomach isn't never flat enough, your arms skinny enough, and all this. So like there's like this big element of uh being skinny as much as possible, very um strict schedule, strict regimen of working out. Like ballet is not just a sport, it's a lifestyle. Like you eat, breathe, sleep ballet. Like this is your entire life. You barely have time for a social life. Like it's um like I mean they can, and especially off season, it's a little bit more chillax, but it's the lifestyle is truly insane, and it depends per company, per countries. In Russia, they're even stricter. A lot of professional ballet dancer, they go into boarding schools when they're 5 years
Mm.
old, and that's all they do. They have their schooling at the same time, but it's an early career, short-lived career. And so another element that we see in the movie is with this older dancer played by Winona Ryder,
Mm.
who
Beth, right?
right, a
Yeah.
career ends when she's about 40, I'd say. And it's not an uncommon age. I think the oldest maybe main dancer might have been close to 50, but it's more common to be around 35, 45. So it's a really short-lived career. And when that's all you did for your entire life up to that point, it's it's like your entire world shatters, and that's something that we get to see in the movie. So these
Yeah.
are some examples.
Yeah. Also, I remember you pointed out to me the changing of the shoes.
Mhm.
You wear new point shoes every day,
Right.
which is I don't know exactly what the cost is, but you're saying it's extremely high cost for
Yeah.
running a ballet
I
studio.
think it was a couple. $1 billion per company for all their dancers. So like, it's not.
A couple billion?
Wait, was it
Or
millions?
million?
Maybe
Billion is a lot.
yeah, maybe too much.
Billion's
No,
like you
million.
need funding
Okay,
from
no,
Warren Buffett.
you're right. It might have
Yeah.
been a couple million.
Yeah.
But like, it's so okay. A pair of shoes. When I go to like, I'm sure they have a deal when you're in a company, but when I go buy point shoes, I would say like it depends as well by brands, but it's somewhere between $50 and $80. Last I checked, which was like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Took a long break. So could be more now, but like that's about how much it costs for one pair of point shoes. When you're a professional dancer and you dance on point shoes for several hours every day, you go through them very quickly. Often dancers will have like a couple of pairs that they use simultaneously, but when you perform, you usually have a pair that you prepare for this performance and they're dead by the end of this performance. So it depends how much you dance in them. So like for non-professionals, like they can last you several months depending just how much time you spend on them. But for professionals, it's generally like about a pair a day.
And that scene, I think it's when Natalie Portman, when Nina first wakes up in the morning and she's stretching out her toes. And I said to you, I was like, that has to be exaggerated. There's no way her toes are that fucking gross. Because you would think looking at the toes, they were attached to an ogre. And then it pans up to Natalie Portman. You're like, oh, she's such a beautiful person, but her toes are fucking gross.
It is one of the most famous thing with ballet dancers. Like everyone wants the legs of a ballet dancer. Like they have beautiful bodies they have really lean muscles, but their feet are the grossest thing in the world. So they have like bunions. Because of like the way the point shoe is, you have your toes straight on the box, especially your first two bigger toes. The other ones are kind of like half floating. And so you don't have all the weight on the very end of your toes.
Yeah.
The box of the shoe is tied around. So in your foot, you do have like at the end of your toes, you kind of have this part that goes a bit bigger. And so this rests on the top of the box of the vamp. And so over time, they grow as well. So you have like, obviously these toes are destroyed by like, they're like often bleeding, etc. And on top of that, you have the outside of the feet are like these like bunions basically growing from the pressure on the box. And I mean, they have extremely hard feet, which it makes it very pretty once it's in the shoe, etc. But that can look a little bit crazy to normal people. Very veiny, obviously, because they're like extreme, like it's basically pure muscle and skin. So yeah, ballet feet are known to be not the best to look at.
Yeah, it basically is like like when you lift a muscle, like if I'm lifting back muscles, my back's going to get bigger. I feel like when you're doing all of that stuff in your feet, there are small muscles in your feet and you're also changing the bone structure. So like your toes are constantly like fracturing, micro-fracturing and rebuilding. There's all scar tissue. Your little muscles are getting bigger. So it is like you're turning your foot into like this gross but useful thing that just looks appalling, but it serves a purpose.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And also going off of the eating disorder thing. So I rewatched a few scenes in between when we watched it last week and before this podcast. So something I noticed is in the beginning, and we'll talk about this in a sec, but like the opening dream sequence with Natalie Portman where her character Nina is dreaming about playing the Swan Queen, and the Rothbart, the evil black ogre dude with the horns, comes in to cast a spell. Her back in the first sequence and earlier on in the movie is completely jacked. And the first time we watch it, I thought that was the like a stand-in ballet dancer for Natalie Portman, but her top, like they use most of her top half for the movie and it pans around and there's no cut. So like that was Natalie Portman's back at the beginning of the movie. And then by the end, like all that definition is kind of gone. So I'm wondering if they had her start at a weight that's already really light, and then we're like, you need to lose another like 10 to 15, maybe even 20 pounds during the movie because you're psychologically deteriorating and we need that reflected in your body. Like you're going to start as like a normal ballerina size, and then you're going to go into like when she takes her shirt off at the end, it's like literally just you see her spine and there's
I
nothing
mean,
there.
it might be, it could also be like plays with lighting and some special effects and stuff. Because from what I was reading, is that she really did like basically a year-long training leading up to the movie, and that training started with like a few hours a day here and there, and then I think the 6 months before they did like 8 hours of working out, like 5 hours of ballet, 3 hours of swimming or something like
Yeah.
that, like proper intense training. And that seemed to be like leading up to the movie. So I honestly think that was one of these movies that took kind of a while. Like we watched Castaway, where it's like you're gonna like lose all the weight and then you're gonna gain it back fairly quickly so we can film it in reverse type of thing. So I'm not the director, so like I don't know if they did something like that when they have had her lose even more weight, or they started with her having like really the minimal weight she could bear and then starting
Yeah.
eating a bit more and doing something like that. I don't know. Um, but I mean, I think lighting can make such a big effect as well, highlighting, especially when you talk about that first scene, well, is like basically in the dark and you just have like those two lights. I think it really highlights muscles a lot better rather than the bony part. And then towards the end, when it's like in the dance studio, it's like this really bright, harsh hospital type light,
Yeah.
which really showcases like imperfections, just as how bony her back is and things like that. So it could be a mix. I definitely think
It
lighting.
could, yeah, it could just be lighting, playing
Mm-hmm.
with different angles and making her look skinnier. But I realized that the second time going through some of the scenes where I was like, oh no, like whether she's actually losing weight on top of an already ridiculously light weight or it's just camera tricks, they do want you to think that she's getting even skinnier as the movie's going on, like
Right.
just the way that they shoot
No,
her.
exactly. I think it's part of it all to be just like she, like her state physically, because of also how, like possibly because she's throwing up even more, but also how she um mentally is kind of like just destroying herself, is just having physical impact
Yeah.
on her body as well.
Yeah.
So
So that opening dream sequence where you have Rothbart, the sorcerer, Blackhorn Devil, uh, casts a spell on Nina, who's playing the Swan Queen. When I was going back and looking at that scene the second time,
mhm.
I, for some reason, my mind connected like having a spell cast on her in the beginning to me seems like Rothbard or some figure above Nina planting the seeds of her psychotic break. Basically, this is symbolizing you're a woman in your early to mid 20s,
Mhm.
which, if you're a woman, typically psychotic breaks happen uh, in your early to mid 20s. And then for guys, when I look this up, it's more like late 20s, early 30s. But I think that could be like that first scene is symbolic of
Mhm.
I'm casting a spell. Like you might have been kind of normal, neurotypical up to your life until now, but now it's like shit's like really gonna go off the rails.
I think there's definitely this parallel where it's like there's a growth from childhood into adulthood, as well as the decline. So there's this progression, and you see that with the costumes as well. So like obviously her room is like all pink, and when you start seeing her dancing, same thing. Her leotard is pink. She has like pink tights, pink leg warmers, like everything is pink. And as we progress into her downfall and into her growth as a woman, she's starting to include more black into her outfits and stuff. And you see that as well with her behavior. She's very like little girl, childish, not confident, very timid. And then she kind of grows into this woman who's just telling him to shut up and just kind of like develop like this. But that's also like the link to her demise, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, she is very uh like she's very stunted emotionally at the beginning of the movie.
Mhm.
Everything, like you said, everything in her room is pink. She has a wind up little
Right, she's like,
toy
it's
to
a
go to
little
sleep.
girl's room.
Yeah, exactly. It looks like you would expect an 8-year-old
Yeah,
to
her
come out
mom
of that
treats
room.
her like it.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
then you see her discovering her sexuality through her dreams with Lily. She's touching herself, things like that. Like, it's really her becoming a woman.
Yeah.
And so there is this idea of growth in one way, and on the other hand, this descent into madness.
Yeah. And going off of the hallucinations of Lily, she tends to have a lot of hallucinations on the train. Like I was noticing that looking back, like every time she's on the train, she's hallucinating something, whether she's seeing her own reflection
Yeah.
and her reflection's doing something different than she is in the train. There's
On her way home.
on her way home, she sees herself, and then it turns out it's just like some other random woman.
Yeah.
The first time she sees Lily, when Nina sees Lily across the train car, it looks like she's looking at herself at first, and then Mila Kunis walks by and you see someone different.
Yeah.
And then the guy who she's sitting across from on the train, just like finger banging himself,
Yeah.
just like fucking weird. Yeah.
That's so disturbing. I think that might represent her shame because it's happened after she touched herself, saw her mom there. So I think she felt incredible shame. And so this was like her psyche being like expressing the shamefulness that she felt about it. So I think there's just like similar with this conflict about leaving behind this childhood life, entering womanhood, and trying to find this balance. And I think it's something that everyone kind of goes through, and it can be very challenging. And I think it kind of goes back to that parallel with the white swan and the black swan. The black swan being a fully confident in your sexuality woman versus the white swan, who is this pure little thing, so fragile. And so it's kind of trying to find this balance between the two. And I think this is what your 20s really are like, is abandoning the child in a way, like, well, trying to still kind of maintain some of that childhood, but like becoming an adult and what that entails, and walking that thin line.
Yeah, and another layer that came into my head, this was after we watched another movie that takes place entirely on a train, is Train to Busan.
Yeah.
And
very different.
Very different. But when we watched that movie, and then I was looking back on scenes with this where the train to me symbolizes two different things. And Train to Busan, spoiler alert. I mean, this whole episode is spoiler alert with Black Swan. We're assuming you've seen it.
Yeah, but like Black Swan came out 15 years ago. It's like if we were talking about Titanic and be like, by the way, they die.
Yes, World War II.
Sorry.
Spoiler alert. The United States was on the winning side. But there's this parallel where in Train to Busan, zombies are attacking the train, and the train starts slow, and so does the zombie attack. And then at the end of the movie, the train literally goes off the rails, and so does society, because obviously the zombies are multiplying and shit's hitting the fan. And so in Train to Busan, the train represents society going off the rails, where I think in Black Swan, the train represents her mental state going off the rails, where the train pulls out of the station slow, and then all of a sudden it speeds up, it goes out of control, and then the actual train doesn't derail in Black Swan, but her mental state ends up going completely to shit.
I mean, you could argue that it does derail because she potentially is dead by the end. So it's
her mental state, I'm saying, but not the actual train. There was no like physical train derailing like in Train to Busan.
I think you're being confusing right now.
What's confusing?
Well, I mean, I get the parallel that you're making with like the train derailing, but I think you could argue that her train is derailing, is that she's not managing to find this balance, and she goes nuts.
Let me try to say it in a less confusing way. I think the trains in each of those movies derail, but now I'm confusing myself.
I know. I was gonna say, do you mean the actual train or the figurative train?
The symbol of the train. I'll just go. The symbol of the train in Train to Busan represents the derailing of society, where the symbol of the train in Black Swan represents the derailing of her mental state.
Sure.
And that's what I was trying to get at. And then the physical train in Train to Busan actually derails
Right.
at some point at the end. But the physical train in Black Swan, it's just sort of like a quick scene. It's not, obviously, it doesn't take place entirely on the train like in Train to Busan.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I also feel that maybe Train to Busan is not that deep, but I like the parallel that you're making, I guess.
I mean, I don't think of that as deep. I just think of it as like this train is, and not to get too far off on the train, but like there could have been there are a bunch of different modes of transportation to have a zombie movie, and you could have filmed it
Sure.
anyway. The director or whoever wrote the script chose a train purposefully, just like
Mm-hmm.
Darren Aronofsky chose a train for Nina to have a lot of her
Sure.
hallucinations, and I think that was purposeful to show like
Well,
the train derailing
I
like the
think
mental state
I
of
think
Nina.
I don't know if it's necessarily because she's also in the bus sometimes. I think it's the transit home that I think is important. I think most of these hallucinations and derailment happen on the transit at the end of the day. It does seem as well that like, she starts most of the day fairly normally and then it decays over time during the day. And so by the time she gets home, that's when things start getting like weird.
Yeah.
And so you could also make that argument that obviously she's been dancing all day, she's tired. And for anything, even for people that don't are not going through something like she's going through, usually at the end of the day, that's when you have your darkest thoughts, you tend to be less optimistic and stuff. And then this is why you say just slip it off. Usually you wake up the next morning and you feel like you can see your problem with brighter eyes. And so I don't know how much emphasis is on the train itself or just kind of like the transit home and just kind of like, again, those clashing between those two worlds when she's like, trying to be perfect in ballet. And then she's kind of like just butting heads with her mom as she's like trying to keep her little girl safe, and she's just like, leave me alone, trying to like basically acting kind of like a teenager, even though she's in her mid-20s by that
Yeah.
point. So again, clashing back with that childhood aspect. But for Train to Busan, there could be more to it than what I've seen. And obviously they did choose the train for a purpose, but I don't know if it's like in the same way. Like Black Swan is purposely a complex layered movie with a lot of metaphors and imageries for what this actually means and stuff. Well, like Train to Busan is a zombie movie happening on a train and it's still like a great movie, but I just don't know if there's as much of a parallel to be taken as like, I mean, you could say, it's like the train of life, and indeed you have like a granny and a kid and a woman who's
Yeah.
pregnant. So it could be parallel to
I
life, but maybe not.
they're obviously two very different parallels,
Very,
but
very.
I just was pointing out the symbolism of the train in each of those movies, and I could be completely wrong. Darren Aronofsky, and he could be like, no, I just fucking the train looked cool on camera, and we
Right.
decided to shoot it in there. I have no idea. I just noticed that um, between the two movies, and because we watched them in so close proximity,
Yes.
the train scenes in both made me think about the other.
Yeah.
But I want to get into the scene where Thomas, the instructor of the entire ballet, is tapping each
Mm-hmm.
ballet dancer on the shoulder, and the ones that don't get tapped end up auditioning for Black Swan or the Swan Queen.
The one, yes, that did not get that
Yeah,
part.
when he goes, if you don't get tapped, meet me at
Uh-huh.
5 p.m.
Yeah, yeah,
wherever.
yeah.
And this sets up the whole narrative of the Black Swan ballet for people who are not familiar with it, because he's saying it out loud. So I just wanted to reiterate the the narrative arc of Black Swan. So Thomas, as he's tapping these girls on the shoulder, he's sort of like doing his whole like pronouncement. Here I am. I'm like this sophisticated ballet guy that I'm talking down to you like I'm a fucking genius. And he says, "We all know the story. A virginal girl, pure and sweet, trapped in the body of a swan. She desires freedom, but only true love can break the spell. Her wish is nearly granted in the form of a prince, but before he can declare his love, the lustful twin, the black swan, tricks and seduces him. Devastated, the white swan leaps off a cliff, killing herself in death, and finds freedom." And you can I'm going to lay out a few themes that I think the black swan represents, and you can obviously agree, disagree, whatever you want. This is just the sort of like the three different arcs that I was noticing throughout the movie. And people have written about this, like these are Reddit theories as well, so these are not all entirely original. These are things that are already out there when I was doing research about the movie. But three of the things that I was seeing was the schizo theme, like the state of Nina's mental health. The story of the Black Swan represents Nina's psychotic break between the manic highs, depressive lows, white and black, darkness and light. And then I wrote down you could see the spell in the beginning as like the start of her psychosis, and for Nina that would be the spell could be like her biology or her upbringing, like whatever sort of like led to this collapsing at her point in her life. The next theme, the creative theme, which is being a true artist demands calling upon the darkness and the light, two sides of the swan. Discipline versus letting go, which is what Tomas says throughout the entire movie. He's like, "You're perfect," or what does he say? He's like,
the technique has nothing. Like your technique is perfect, but you're just too basically uptight, and you need to like let go for the black swan.
Yeah, he's like, "You fouette like a robot. Like I feel
Basically.
nothing." And he calls out one of the male dancers at some point. He's like, "Would you fuck this girl?"
Wait, actually,
And
fun
he's like,
fact.
"I don't know."
Fun fact, I didn't realize. Apparently, the guy that he called upon and asked him if he would fuck her, that's her husband.
Really?
So he's like, obviously I would, but I have to say no.
Yeah, he's like, "I fucked her in the bathroom right before this scene, and I do it again." But yeah, he like humiliates her based on the fact that her technique is flawless.
Yeah.
But perfection is not just flawless. Perfection is letting
Yeah.
go. You have to let go.
And so I think what makes ballet so beautiful but also so hard is like it's athleticism, it's artistic, and it's theatrical. You're acting as well. So you need to be able to convey a story just by how your body moves, how your face shows. Like you're not speaking at all. You're just telling this entire story through the art of being able to talk through your body, through your facial expressions, while doing something that is incredibly difficult and an exploit of athleticism, truly, and then do that night after night.
Yeah, and then you have to be able to let go to make it believable.
No, exactly. But that's
Yeah.
my point, is that if you just do fouettes and pirouettes, it's going to be like, well, it's very nice, but what's going on? You need to fouette like your life depends on it. Like maybe it shows like how, like, okay, for example, in Swan Lake, one of the most famous codas, so solo moments, is the famous fouettes. I think it's 32, if I'm not mistaken. So she does, so fouette is a pirouette, and then the leg is extended and fouettes the air, whips the air to be able to keep going. And so they do that 32 times, sometimes doing double pirouettes. So you're just spinning a lot. And that's one of the hardest moves in ballets as well. And so the Black Swan does this to seduce the prince. It's like this very intricate movement, and then she does a bunch of other things, but like it's all about seducing the prince. Or if you're doing like a really slow arabesque, maybe that's to express that you are saddened and disappointed that the prince has not chosen you, things like this. And so if it's just a fouette, if it's just a pirouette, that's all it is. But like in ballet, it has to mean something. And so you have to be able to let go of just like technique is fundamental, but you need to be also able to express with your body and emotion. And so I think that's also what the let go is.
Yeah. Well, there's one line by Thomas where he says, all that discipline and what for? Like, what the fuck is the point of doing all this discipline if you can't,
Mm-hmm.
like, not have fun because, like, that would be the wrong word, but
But
the
it
act of,
is
like,
fun.
releasing your technical side of your brain where you're the act of releasing the analytical practice side of your brain and going, okay, I've practiced this hundreds of thousands of times. Now this performance is a celebration. Now I'm just gonna
Right.
trust myself,
No,
and however
exactly.
it comes out, it comes out.
And you need to be able to, like, feel the music, be with it, not just dance to it. And I think that's what a lot of this is. And it's just like, okay, I think a great example is like, for example, singing. You can have someone that has a beautiful voice, they hit all the right notes, but that's it. Like you listen to it, you're like, this is nice. And then you have the person that when they sing, your hairs lift up. You get goosebumps, maybe you'll cry. Like it moves you. And I think this is the difference between technique and like
Soul.
and yeah, and soul. And so I think that's what that let go is just like your technique is perfect, you sing perfectly, but I feel nothing
Yeah.
when I watch you, and I need to feel something. I need to feel, I need to fall in, this is what it's like, seduce him, seduce the audience. I need to fall in love with you. Then I want my heart to be broken when the prince doesn't love you back, and I want to suffer with you when you choose to kill yourself from it.
Yeah.
And that's what makes a performance mind-blowing. This is what is expected from principal dancers, or just ballet in general, is that you feel something, you feel joy, you feel sadness, you feel fear, excitement. And if your technique is great but you can't make the audience feel anything, then you're talented, but like it's not gonna be more than that.
Yeah. It's like we just watched the Bob Dylan movie with
Mm,
Timothy Chalamet.
yeah.
Bob Dylan would never in a million years win American Idol because American Idol is judged purely on the quality of the
Yeah.
voice.
Yeah.
But you can name what, 3 American Idol winners out of the 25
Mm-hmm.
plus seasons they've had. There's something that rises beyond the technical proficiency of
Mm,
the art form, whether it's in dance or singing, painting, that like if you don't make people feel a certain way,
mm-hmm.
if you can't gather emotion and then release it onto an audience,
Exactly.
you're never going to be able to compete with the
Yeah.
amount of people who do, and no amount of technical work is going to get you there.
Right. And I think you can see that a lot with opera singing, which I think is very close in a way to ballet, at least in the artistry level, because it's kind of similar. You're not speaking, you're singing, you're not doing a lot of movement, but you're also telling a story, you're conveying an emotion. And so if you're an opera singer that has an amazing technique, but that's all it is, it's like same thing. Like I need when I hear an opera singer sing, I need to feel the pain. Like maybe like their father just died or something like that.
Mhm.
I want to feel in their voice the pain that it is to lose your father. Like I don't want to just hear a perfect vibrato. And I think it's very similar to ballet, where through your body, through your dancing, and obviously there's also the music and there's the theatrics that happen at the same time, but I need to feel your pain through the movement that
Yeah.
you're.
That reminds me of something that David Fincher said, who I mistakenly brought up at the beginning of the podcast. When I said Darren Aronofsky
Right.
directed Social Network, it was
Right.
actually David Fincher. So like I was going down the rabbit hole of like these director sort of these Instagram profiles where it's just screenwriters, directors, actors speaking on stuff because Darren Aronofsky was in a lot of those. But one thing that came up with David Fincher, that when you said you're looking for that vibrato from an opera singer, but also to feel the fact that he just lost his father, David Fincher is famous for being willing to do 150 plus takes on a single
Mm.
scene. And some actors love it because they get a chance to express themselves different ways. some actors fucking hate it. And when people talk about David Fincher, they say that, and he might have said this himself. I forget if it was someone talking about him or him speaking first person, but like he's looking for that perfect mistake.
Mm.
That like if a scene is too almost
Right.
like to the detail, it in a way takes you out of it because you're like it wouldn't really
Yeah,
happen like
because
that.
humans aren't perfect.
Yeah.
And you need a little bit of error for
And
that.
there was one scene in particular in The Social Network where David Fincher had Jesse Eisenberg come into the room in his college dorm and throw down his book bag
Mhm.
and go to the fridge and open a bottle of
Mhm.
Coca-Cola. And
Mhm.
he did it, I don't know the exact amount of times, but like dozens of times
Mhm.
because he wanted to do it until the point where it looked like Jesse Eisenberg actually lived in that dorm room.
Yeah.
If you know your dorm room, you don't look where you're going to
No,
throw
you
your
know where it
backpack.
is.
You fucking fling your backpack, you open it,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have like
yeah.
the bottle opener in position, you crack it, and he's like, I want you to do it so many times that you
That
feel
it
like you live in this dorm room.
yeah, I want you to do it 150 times because in real life you probably have done this routine
Yeah.
150 times because it's your dorm room. Yeah,
And
that
with the
makes sense.
opera singer, like if the vibrato's too perfect, it's like, no, if you just lost your father, your voice might
You're
crack a little
cracking,
bit. Yeah.
exactly. And I mean, see, I'm thinking like also when you're acting, like you can be an actor that's able to cry on command. Like I'm just like, okay, cry, go. Like we've seen that scene with Margot Robbie in what's that movie with Brad Pitt?
Margot Robbie, Brad Pitt,
Yeah,
Babylon?
Babylon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that movie did not get enough credit. But anyway, like there's that scene where it's just like
Terrible
cry,
marketing,
where
but that's
but
a whole
they're
nother
like cry,
podcast.
and
Yeah.
then she cries and stuff. Like it's just
Yeah.
like it's great if as an actor you can just cry on command immediately. But like that's not. I mean, I'm not a director, but I'm assuming if I were a director, I'd be like, I don't care that you can just cry on command. I want you to make me cry.
Yeah.
So it's like if you can cry, but I'm not feeling, you're not able to, like you said, exhale this pain to the point that it feels contagious, and now I'm getting it. Then yeah, it's not gonna work. So
As you're saying that, I'm wondering if they're gonna use AI to help prepare actors for scenes where,
wow.
like, let's say you're trying to get into a moment where you get on the phone as an actor and you're being told that your wife just got in a car crash and she's in critical condition
Yeah.
and you're not really feeling it. But then there's someone on set that could give you a headset, like one of those like Apple Pro headsets that
Mhm.
wraps all the way around. And they go, here's an AI rendering, like very realistic of your wife getting in a car crash and watch this. But like it's fucked up. But like you would watch that and then 30 seconds later you'd be like fucking trembling, being on the phone,
Yeah.
being like,
I mean, maybe, but at the same time, like this is something that people have done forever, and people are still able to do it. So it's just like, is it something that you really need? I mean, they already use like the stick thing, and I mean, don't get me wrong. I've seen actors are really not good at crying and stuff, but I mean, that's the casting director's fault.
yeah.
So
Okay, so the just to reiterate, so the first two themes were the mental schizo theme, the creative theme. The last theme is a hotly contested theme
yeah,
online. This
what
is
is
a
it?
very popular sort of theme for what the Black Swan could possibly represent. It's
Okay.
that Nina was molested by her mother, Erica. That Erica was not just an overbearing mother, but Erica was abusing Nina on a regular basis as a child. And so the story of the Black Swan represents this darkness versus light with her battle, Nina's battle to manifest her true sexuality while reconciling her past sexual traumatic abuse from her mother. And here's some of the plot points that people point out and that I went back to go take a look at when I was rewatching some
Mm-hmm.
scenes. So there's two or three times in the movie where Erica, Nina's mom, demands Nina to take her shirt off. Like very just
Mm,
like she comes back from ballet at one point and she's just like, take your shirt off right now.
mm-hmm.
Just like a weird command for a mom to give. She does that a couple times throughout the movie. If you watch her tuck in Nina at night, it's like semi-erotic because she like sort of puts her hands down to like her abdomen and is rubbing her cheek. And
Mm.
if you watch it, the first time you might miss it, but I'm watching the scenes again and I'm like, and this is before I even looked at this theory.
Right.
It's like s- a little bit too much for a mom daughter to
Okay.
like be stroking like lower regions of like the lower
Uh-huh.
back and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
And let me just finish this other stuff. Uh and then Nina, when she gets the instruction from Thomas to go finger herself, he says, "I have a homework assignment for you. Go finger
Mhm.
blast yourself in bed." She's losing herself and, she's experiencing pleasure. And then Nina turns and she hallucinates her mom watching
I
her,
don't think she hallucinated. I think she's genuinely here because she had like a bit of an episode, so she probably spent the
or
night there.
or the mom was there. We don't know for sure, but if you think it's possible she's actually there. And that's weird that like if she did hallucinate her mom, that she would be thinking of her mom involved in something sexual when she's experiencing so much pleasure that her brain is projecting that.
Okay.
We mentioned before, Nina was super stunted as a child. She has a pink room, stuffed animals, wind up musical box. People that experience trauma as kids often get frozen emotionally in time. Like it
Mhm.
stunts their growing up. And then two other things that I thought were kind of weird when they were said in the moment. Uh, at one point, Nina's mom tucks in Nina again, like kind of like semi sexualized, and she whispers in her ear, "Everything will be better in the morning." It always is. And then there's another time where Nina's getting ready at night, and her mom says, "Are you ready for me yet?" Which is like a weird way to ask your daughter, like, "Are
At
you
what
ready
moment
to
does
be
she say
tucked
that?
in?"
Oh, for the tucking in.
She says, "Are you ready?" She doesn't say, "Are you
No.
ready?" She says, "Are you ready for me
Well,
yet?"
as in maybe like, are you like
That's a
dressed?
weird. That's
To
a
me, no, to
weird.
me, that's more like, are you like dressed and stuff? Okay, here's the thing. I don't believe that at all. I think she has, there's definitely emotional abuse. Absolutely. Like, for example, with the cake scene, when she's like, oh, I don't think I can and stuff. And then she just like grabs it and she's like, fine, I'll just throw it out. This is like, as someone who's been in this type of situation, I can definitely concur that this is emotional manipulation and
Mhm.
that she is stunting her growth by keeping her the little girl and stuff. I don't think there's anything sexual about it. I think that scene, for example, when she's touching herself and then she sees her mom, I think her mom's genuinely there because, like I said, she had like a bit of a weird night. So she probably like slept in the room with her to just keep an eye on her. And she didn't realize it was that. And it's just kind of like, again, that clashing between abandoned, like leaving childhood and her mom not letting her leave childhood to get into becoming a more sexually confident woman. I think this is what this is more about. They definitely have a very weird relationship. What I think is very weird is that she treats her like she's an 8-year-old. Like she needs her help to bathe herself. She needs her help to cut her own nails. She needs her help to get dressed, to get undressed, etc. She treats her like a child. I don't think there is like sexual abuse that went on. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but this is not the what I was getting. And I think there's a lot of emotional abuse linked to the fact that we know the story of the parent that had a dream that did not work and then they put that dream on that child. It makes you wonder whether Nina ever even like if she would have ever been a ballerina if it wasn't for her mom forcing into it. I have known kids that were pushed so hard by their parents to follow a career path that they themselves had to give up on. And and I think a lot of that is that is just kind of like keeping her a child to keep controlling her life and not wanting her to grow up. I think this is more what's happening.
Yeah, I didn't buy into the sexual abuse theory by the mother until I started watching some of the scenes over again. And there are these subtle things where the mom will like she just she's everything about her is kind of sexual throughout the movie. Like
Mm,
she does sexualize things around her daughter. It's like a normal mother if they're, like a 3 out of 10, she's kind of like at a 5 or 6 out of
mm.
10 on the dial of like
I think she's a weird.
weirdness slash like
Sure,
so
she has a
almost like
weird.
predatory looks towards Nina when she's getting changed. She like kind of like she'll look at her back and the scar and like her finger, like, it's not the way a mom would analyze a cut on their child. Like, she's sort of, like, stroking her back and her shoulders, taking a look at
Mm,
it. Like, these, like,
I
weird
don't know.
subtleties. It's not overt. It's not like
I think it's
it
just meant
could
for
go
you to
either
be
way.
uncomfortable. I don't know if it's necessarily to be like she's sexually abused her child. I think it's more part of the uncomfortable package that makes you feel uneasy and stuff.
Yeah, I just think, the "Are you ready for me yet?" kind of sealed it into me because
Mm.
that's like, that kind of sounds like something an adult that was abusing a child would say,
I
like,
don't know
"Are
if it
you
means
ready
like, are you
for me
ready
yet?"
for me to tuck you in?
It could be, but it just seemed a little bit off to me when I was watching it.
Yeah, and I think part
Like,
of it
not
is
like, "Can
maybe
I come in?" But like, "Are you ready for" like Nina's like an object for her mom, like, "Make yourself ready for me," not, "Are you ready?"
I do think that's true, but that's maybe because she's her little ballerina. She's a little project.
Yeah,
She's more a project than her child. I don't think the sexualization is necessarily there. I think she just sees her as an extension of herself that she uses to live the dream that she didn't get to live.
yeah. Here's another part that's connected to that theory that may give a little more insight into
Mm,
the sexual abuse. Again, this is all just, what do you call it? Not, speculation.
mhm.
This could be true, this could be false.
Sure,
We have
theories.
no idea, it's just our take watching a movie that someone else made
Okay,
that may have had no intentions for this to happen. These
okay.
these are just theories swirling around online.
Brings me back to school, analyzing three-line poems and just be like, well, this is mother issues right there.
Yeah, yeah, he said something about his mom, he must have been banging her in her dream.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So there's a theory that Nina's mom, Erica, throughout the movie, every single time she's in the movie is a hallucination. Her entire character is a
Oh,
hallucination to Nina. Some things to back this up.
okay.
In every scene, the mom is wearing the same exact thing. She's wearing the black shirt with the same pants. Every scene.
Oh, okay.
And the movie takes place over months, like
Yeah.
her auditioning, getting ready for the show happening. She's in the movie 7 or 8 times. Every single outfit is exactly the same, and I went back and looked at it, and it is true. It's the same
Oh, and
outfit.
the paintings.
So that's another thing. The paintings earlier on in the movie, the paintings look, uh
Like her, like the mom.
Like, like the mom is painting Natalie Portman, but in like a good light or like in a normal light.
Mhm.
But then the paintings, every time you see them, get a little more deranged and twisted. Like the
No,
smiles
yeah.
get weird. She has that hallucination where they all sort of like go crazy in the room. But even if you see the paintings before that, they sort of like slowly degrade into derangement throughout the
Yeah, yeah,
film.
yeah, yeah.
And so the mom that like these paintings that the mom may not have even touched are like changing
Mhm.
in Nina's mind. The mom in the movie never interacts with anyone except Nina.
That's true.
There is one point where she calls in sick to the ballet to say Nina's not feeling well.
Right.
But
But Nina could have made that
but
call.
the only Nina could have made that call, and the only recognition of that call is when Nina arrives and Mila Kunis, her character Lily says, "Wait, you're not supposed to be here. Why is she here?"
Yeah.
I think that's a hallucination by Nina. I don't think uh, Lily said that in real life
Yeah, that
because
doesn't sound like her character when we see her all over the time. She's always very friendly and supportive of
yeah,
Nina.
and Thomas comes into her room and he doesn't say, "Oh my God, I heard you were sick. Are you okay?" He
Yeah.
just comes in and says like, sorry, I gave it away to Lily
Yeah.
already," and she goes, "I'm the White
Yeah,
Swan."
probably because she was late,
I don't
so
think there was a phone call.
Huh.
And then the first scene where, after the dream sequence where Nina is talking in front of the mirror to her mom,
Yeah.
no one answers. She just talks, and then her mom appears in the next scene. She's just talking out loud. She's like, "I had a dream that I was
Yeah.
the Swan Queen."
Huh.
No one, and I think that's foreshadowing of like she's talking to herself. There's no one actually
Yeah.
in the apartment. Another thing connected to the sexual abuse, that I think, uh, strengthens that theory is when Nina and Lily come home together
Mhm.
and she brings Lily into her room
Yeah.
and the mom tries to get in. Nina smashes her mom's hand in the
No,
door.
that's a different scene.
Is that a different
Yeah,
scene?
that's the night before the actual night. Because
Is it the
that's when
okay.
she, like, smashed her fingers and then she calls in for her sick.
Okay, I think you're right, I was confusing that, but, either way, when you have, I think, like, Nina smashing and breaking her mom's hand to kick her out of her bedroom, I think that could be, like, like, symbolic of Nina, like, finally kicking her mom out of not out of the house, but, like, out of her bedroom, which is where a lot of, like, sexual fantasies and things happen,
Mhm.
because I think if it was meant to symbolize the breaking with an overbearing mom, she would have kicked the mom out of the apartment. But, like,
Mhm.
she just kicked her out of the bedroom. It was like, "No, get out of my
Yeah.
bedroom."
Yeah.
So I think that that could be something. And then Nina sees her mom crying in the audience at the end, not like someone who just got their hand smashed by their daughter. And, imagine, like, breaking your dad's fingers in the door, and then they show up and they're sitting front and center in the audience with, like, no
Yeah, but
discernible
she's also
pain.
so obsessive with her that, like, she's so obsessed with her that I would not be surprised that she would still. And here's the thing, I don't think that's something we can really understand as parent. I think okay, now that's actually spoilers. But like Squid Games too.
Yeah,
So if you haven't seen, like, maybe skip for 1 minute. The the son abandons the mom twice, and both times she basically forgives him and comes back. So I think there is also this thing. Okay, you can come back now. There's also this thing where a parent will be more forgiving than a normal person to their child. That's
yeah.
just like, especially mothers. So I'm not personally, like, shocked that she would smash her hand and then still show up for a show.
I that easily could be it as well. There is so this last piece, and this is why you found me watching the last scene of Whiplash
Oh yeah,
when you
but I
came
totally
back.
saw the connection when you were watching this.
So
It's the same as Discipline to Perfection.
discipline to perfection, but I wanted to rewatch this scene because at the end of Black Swan, when Nina is at the top and she's about to fall off and kill herself as the white swan,
Mhm.
she sees her mom in the audience and her mom is giving a look of like she's crying, but it's not sad. She's like, "You did it. Like
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is it." And
yeah.
Nina's like, "I finally attained perfection."
Perfection.
There's a similar scene in Whiplash where the guy, Fletcher, the teacher in Whiplash,
Mhm.
has been so abusive the entire movie to Miles Teller's character.
Mhm.
But at the end of Whiplash, when he's playing the long drum solo and he tells Fletcher to fuck off, kind of like Nina
Mhm.
tells her mom to fuck off, like smashes her hand in the
Yeah.
door. At the end, Fletcher's like, "Okay, like, let's see what this kid can do," and he's letting the solo ride, and then right at the peak of the solo, Miles Teller's character stops, and there's a pause, and Fletcher looks at him, and he smiles, and you see Miles Teller smile, and he's like, it's like this internal drive to please your abuser. It's like it's an
Yep.
abusive complex
Yep.
of like this guy that literally threw a cymbal at my head and chair at my head. This mom she's definitely been emotionally
Yeah,
abusive,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
possibly physically and sexually abusive, but like she can't help but want to please the person
No,
who made
yeah.
her life complete shit.
I think it's a mix of, like, wanting to prove right, and obviously in the case of Black Swan, like, every single child has this desire to please their parents, to make their parents proud, because they directly connect that pride to how successful a human they are. It's just like, if
Yeah.
my mom is proud of me, that means I'm doing something right. And I think it's kind of like similar. And I guess in a way you could say also that he was a bit of a father figure in his life, and it's just like that person that is breaking you down. You want to, like, all you want is for them to say that they're proud of you and you did something right. It's just this desire, um from, yeah, like someone like this who you look up to, because there's also this thing with Whiplash in particular is like this master guy. Like you want him, if he tells you you're doing something good, then that's like the ultimate compliment type of thing.
Yeah. I want to get into the character of Beth a little bit
Yes.
because she's
Yes.
a conundrum throughout the entire movie with what's real, what is Nina imagining. So just to summarize Beth's character, Beth is a retiring ballerina who's a soloist. She's been like the main,
she
like
was the principal star.
yeah,
She was
she's
the
like
star of the show.
yeah, she's a star of this ballet
the
company
company.
for years. She's now retiring, and Nina is taking her place.
She's forced to retire, so I think that's an important part.
Forced to retire. Nina's taking her place as the Swan Queen,
This
as
young new thing.
as the debut. There's this very intense scene at a gala where Thomas takes Nina up the stairs to make a toast to announce that Beth is retiring and Nina will be replacing her as the Swan Queen. And there's this one line where Thomas looks at Nina and he goes, "Are you ready to be thrown to the wolves?" And to me, that's like, like you're going to be thrown to the wolves of like the critics, and you're going to test the limits of your own physicality. But when you say you're going to throw someone to the wolves, that's a sacrifice. Like you're sacrificing for the greater good. So sort of like symbolic of Nina achieving perfection, but she's sacrificing her brain to do it, like
and
her entire mental health.
She is very much at that point in the movie that fragile little lamb, going back to that white swan, so fragile, so pure, so innocent. And that's like that white little lamb being thrown to the wolves. Yeah.
So, Thomas announces Nina at this gala. Beth and Nina have a confrontation where Nina says something, or Beth says something along the lines of like, "How did you get this job? Just tell me how you did it. Like, did you suck his dick? Or like, well, were you a whore?" And Nina says, "Not all of us had to do that." And then Beth gets fucked, like she's very fucked up, says something to Thomas, like Thomas calls her my little princess, and Nina throughout the movie, she keeps asking like Mila Kunis's character, like, how do I get him to call me my little princess? Like she becomes kind of obsessed with this, but then Beth gets fucked up, walks in front of a car.
She doesn't ask Mila Kunis, but I think at some point they say that he'll end up calling you that, and I think he does in the last scene.
She does ask Mila Kunis at the scene. It's in the club. Okay. Where they're both at the table before they go over to the guys, where the burger comes over.
Mila Kunis tells her like, "Oh, he's going to start calling you that," or something like that.
Nina's talking about how to get Thomas' attention.
Yes.
And Lily says to Nina, "He'll call you his little princess any day now. You just got to let him lick your pussy."
Pretty much, yeah.
And that's like the whole. That'd be hilarious if Darren Aronofsky was like, "No, that wasn't a hallucination. I just wanted Lily to say that."
It is kind of like this parallel between, Beth's character was the wife and he ditched her for the newer, younger thing. Like, I think it's kind of like, it's with ballet dancer, but it's kind of like this parallel, and like, again, being like, you have to sleep with him to be in his good graces. And then like, it keeps coming back to that.
So Beth gets fucked up the night of the gala. She ends up walking in front of a bus or a car, gets hit by it. We don't know if she was committing suicide, if she accidentally, was just drunk as shit and walked in front of a car. But either way, Beth is in the hospital. And then there's this scene where Nina goes to visit Beth in the hospital. She visits her multiple times. The first time she just sees Beth lying there unconscious. And then she looks at her leg and she sees all the pins in her leg and the huge gash, which you would expect if someone gets hit by a fucking bus. And then the second time, Nina goes to see Beth, and there's this stabbing scene in the hospital where Nina gives Beth's contents back in the bag that she took from Beth's dressing room.
She's been stealing her stuff, trying to become more like her. So if you remember at the beginning too, she takes her lipstick, and that's the lipstick that she wears when she goes to see Thomas. Yeah. And like it kisses her, she bites him, which is a very important scene in her becoming the Swan Queen, because she shows that she does have some spunk in her, that she could be the Black Swan. And so it's kind of like her trying to become like Beth, to in a way replace Beth, because Beth was adored by Thomas, and so if she could be more like Beth, then maybe Thomas will notice her.
Yeah. And then so when she gives the stuff back to Beth, one of those things is a knife,
Like,
like a thin blade.
yeah. Well,
Uh,
it's a nail. How do you call it? Like the thing they use, like the
nail file,
file. Yeah, it's a
something like
nail
that, but
file. Yeah,
it's very sharp at the
yeah.
end. And Beth picks it up and she starts yelling at Nina and stabs herself in the face.
Yeah.
And then Beth's face turns into Nina, and Nina continues stabbing herself. It's
You
like,
know what?
so Nina's
I did
watching.
not know this because I always close my eyes during this scene.
So yeah, so Beth's face morphs into Nina.
Okay.
So Nina is watching herself stab herself in like this very
Mm,
surreal, deranged scene, and that's when Nina leaves and goes out of there. So knowing that now, what are your thoughts on the
well, so
scene with
okay,
Beth stabbing herself in the hospital? Is it a all hallucination? Is Nina
right.
seeing? Does Beth actually stab herself? Does Nina stab herself? Like, what do you think happens?
Well, so like also what's
Does Nina
interesting,
stab Beth?
and when she leaves the hospital, she drops it, like she drops the bloody file. So it's more and more feeling like Beth did not do this. I do believe that there's a Beth. It's very possible that she ended up in the hospital, or maybe she did die being hit by that car. You did mention that the reaction from the dancer was really intense for just being in the hospital, although her state is really bad. And I did point out to you that for these dancers, like their body is everything. And so
Hmm.
her being in such a bad accident, and probably, she was in the company this whole time. So all these people have known her for years. So it's probably still very shocking. She's in a really bad state. She's basically in a coma whether it's induced or not. Like, so I could see how people would react so intensely to it, whether she's dead or not. But the fact that Nina had the lime in her hand, dropped it, and then it morphed into her face feels like she didn't imagine the scene. Someone else pointed out when I was reading about it that it is weird that there was no nurses around, no doctors, like there's this crazy thing going on with this woman yelling crazy and nobody walks into the room. That's weird.
Hmm.
Um, so like I think there's definitely, and it's happening also at the height of her hallucination of her manic episode. So I don't even know if she did go to the hospital. It's possible that she did and she imagined all this. The fact that she was then able to go do her performance makes me think that she did not stab herself in the face. Otherwise,
Hmm.
it'd be just like, why is your face like
Yeah,
full
you
of
can't
cuts?
hide that. Yeah.
So I think she probably imagined a lot of that. She may have like gone back to the hospital, seen Beth, and imagined the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
I'm more on that side that
hmm
she went to the hospital and saw Beth and just imagined the stabbing, or she didn't go at all and just hallucinated the
yeah,
entire thing. Because if someone's screaming in a hospital,
yeah,
someone's gonna hear it.
yeah.
Someone's gonna.
Eventually, there's also like these moments when, like, at the end of that crazy manic episode, and she slams the hand of her mom and stuff, she wakes up. So it's just like, I mean, she hits her head on the side of the bed. There's all this, but it's like because eventually at the end of all that manic episode, she wakes up, even though she's technically still continuing after when she goes to the show. It's kind of like at what moment is she awake? At what moment is she sleeping when all this is going down?
Yeah. There's a Reddit theory on the character of Beth. So Beth as a person certainly exists, but what she represents and how much interaction she has with Nina is open to
Mm-hmm.
interpretation. I believe to Nina, she represents the career that her mother gave up for her. When all of the younger dancers are being critical of Beth and saying she should move on, Nina defends Beth, saying that Margaret Fontaine danced into her 50s. I feel she's echoing the message she would have heard from her mother, who delusionally believes that if it weren't for Nina, she would have had a long and successful career. I believe Beth is the volatile character we see portrayed in the earlier scenes, but I don't think any of the scenes of Nina visiting Beth in the hospital are real. The guilt she feels about replacing Beth, effectively ending her career, is fed by the guilt trip her mother has placed on her for cutting short her perceived great career, and therefore Beth saying she is nothing and stabbing herself in the face is Nina imposing her image of her mother's emotions onto Beth. From the snapshots we get of the mother, we see that it's clear she blames Nina for the loss of her career. There is that one point in the movie where she says, like, if it weren't for you, I would have become. And then
Yeah,
Nina's like,
because she got
you would have become what?
pregnant.
And she's like, never mind. Like, and so she's like passive aggressive, like, because of you, like you ended my. And Nina's like, you were 28, like it wasn't gonna happen, and whatever.
which is also fair.
And she says, yeah, from the snapshots we get of the mother, we see that it's clear she blames Nina for the loss of her career. And while she's on the surface caring and overprotecting, I think underneath there's a lot of resentment and desire to sabotage Nina's career. You see this when she buys the cake. As a dancer, she knows full well that Nina would not want it and then puts a guilt trip on Nina by going to throw it in the bin. Also, if you look at all the pictures she painted
she's
of
very
Nina,
manipulative,
none of them are very flattering. And they are certainly not portrayals of a daughter, more like someone obsessing over the thing that has thwarted them. So yeah, it's like Nina took Beth's career like she also took away her mother's career.
So I had read that theory, and while I hear it, I don't agree with it. I think Beth is more representation. And like, as someone who has been in the ballet world, it is very weighing on dancers that it is a short-lived career. If you are lucky, you might make it to 40. Most dancers don't make it that long. And like, and again, that is when we look at principal dancers, those dancers that have made it to the top.
Yeah.
Because like, there's also a huge number of dancers that make it to the company, they make it to the corps de ballet, and they just never become a soloist. Or they might have some solo roles and stuff, but they just never become a principal dancers. And so these dancers might at some point have to and like, because the corps de ballet tend to be those younger dancers, like I've explained to you, and I'll say it again for the listeners. When you enter a company, you start in the corps de ballet. The corps de ballet is just kind of like the extras. When you watch them on stage, it's like this big group of dancers dancing together, like the snowflakes in the Nutcracker. Is just like big group of dancers. And if you're good enough, eventually you can be chosen for smaller roles where maybe you're like in smaller group. Like in Swan Lake, there is this quartet dance with 4 dancers, so you can be selected for that. And then if you're good enough, you can be soloist, then first soloist of principal dancers. And then that's like the best dancers in the company. There's just a handful of them, and they get like the best roles, the Swan Queen role, the main solo roles. And then depending again on countries, etc., like some principal dancers the maximum. In France, for example, you have Étoile, which is like the award for an outstanding principal dancer. And so these dancers will get these incredible roles until the end of their career and tend to have a bit more job security. But the thing is, if you don't get to that soloist rank and you're like maybe 28 at that point, then the corps de ballet is going to be these 18-year-olds, etc. So if you can't walk up the ladder, then you're done. So for actually a lot of dancers, your career might end before you're 30. And I think this is weighing on a lot of dancers. And so Bev just represents this fear of your career ending without you having a word to say about it. You could be extremely successful, and one day this gets pulled from under you. And to me, this is more what this is about rather than a representation of her mom. But it could be also that.
I can see that. So going off of the Beth and Nina stabbing scene, I want to get into the Nina and Lily stabbing scene through the end as we end off in the last 10 minutes or so.
Cool.
So Nina obviously gets the part of the Swan Queen. She dances the first act. She falls from the prince holding her, drops her. She also freaks out, like both probably contributed. And then Nina goes crying into her dressing room, and then Mila Kunis's character, Lily, is sitting there, and she's starting to put on the Black Swan makeup, and she goes, I think I'll take over for you in the second act. I'm going to dance the Black Swan. And Nina says, fuck no, I'm doing this. They end up getting in a grappling fight. Nina pushes Lily against the mirror shatters. They go up on they go down to the floor. Nina is choking Lily, but then Nina also starts to turn like into the Black Swan, like her neck gets weird and extends, and so you could tell like this is also hallucination, all if not parts of it at least. And then as Nina's choking Lily, Lily's face turns into Nina, and then Nina stabs herself in the stomach, like not like towards like
Yeah.
Nina's in the first person, but like in this hallucination, Lily turns into Nina, and Nina stabs what was once Lily
Yeah.
and now Nina. She stabs the projection of herself, but then as she stabs the projection of herself, Nina's face morphs back into Lily.
Hmm.
She drags Lily in the closet. There's blood under the door. She patches it with a towel. In that scene, what do you think actually happened? Because this is also one of the most contested things. Like, does Nina
Actually, I
stab
heard
her?
herself not.
Does Nina stab herself?
Hmm.
Does Nina not stab anyone?
Yeah.
Lily comes back, and you figure out it's a hallucination when Lily congratulates Nina after the second
Right.
act. So you know it wasn't actually Lily.
Right.
But does she stab herself or does she not stab herself? What do you
Yeah.
think?
I think any scene with Lily is very confusing because Lily is also, once again, definitely a real character where she clearly interacts with other dancers. She's interacting with Toma. So we know she's a real character. And then there's also like the fact that in different scenes, like for example, the first time after they spend the night together, quote unquote, um, Nina interacts with Lily in the studio, and Lily's just like, no, I did not come back with you last night. So there is definitely moments where Nina realizes that she's imagining scenes with Lily when Lily is not there. And so that's once again happened after she quote unquote murders Lily. And then Lily comes out and is like, oh my God, you did so good. And that also seems to be more on point with her correct character because it seems like Lily, she's just happy to be here, man. She's just here for a good time. She doesn't seem like she's ever trying to cock block Nina, get into Nina's way or something. It's just, I think Nina is jealous of Lily, especially because Toma keeps pointing out how fuckable she is and that she knows how to let go. And she's so, like, she's everything that Nina's trying to be so that she can be the Black
And
Swan.
Nina also, I think this is a hallucination when the lights go off the second
Hmm.
time,
Yeah.
and Nina's trying to find how to turn them back on, and she
Yeah.
sees Toma and Lily making out on the piano,
Yeah.
like very
No,
aggressively.
exactly. Either it's her, I think she's probably imagining it and imagining herself at the same time because I think at some point she also sees
Yeah,
herself.
yeah.
She's just like her conflict with her sexuality once again. And so Lily, it's like, I think Lily is the perfect definition of a girl crush where it's like, I don't know. And I know the ladies will understand. I don't know if you guys have something like this where it's like, I don't know if
Man
I'm
crush.
well, but it's like when you have this person where you're just like, I don't know if I'm sexually attracted to them or if I want to be them. And it's a little bit of both, maybe. And I think Lily is exactly that for Nina, especially as she's trying to explore her sexuality and all of this. And so to go back to that scene, she clearly hallucinates the presence of Lily. So, like, then the debate is, does she hurt herself or not? And if so, how she would do that? Because of all the hallucinations that she's had, especially when we argue whether the mom is real or not, is does she actually physically does anything ever? Like, is she same thing with Beth? It's like she clearly did not stab herself. I don't think she stabbed Beth, but like that could also be the debate. Like, did she actually attack Beth? Um, but there is no proof that at any point she actually physically manifest her hallucinations.
Mm.
So I don't know. And I think that's what Darren Aronofsky was trying to do is just leave it up to the imagination. Because like something you said to me after we watched it is like it is weird because obviously we all know, especially the ladies, that when you exercise, you bleed faster.
Mm.
And she's dancing this really long number at the end before she jumps out. And somehow she's barely bleeding through putting back her makeup, going back out there, dancing for like at least 5 to 10 minutes for the finale. And then it's only at the very end that she like, I mean, the costume is good, but like you can't contain this much bleeding for so long.
Yeah.
And she probably would have passed out from bleeding out
Yeah,
or
she's like
something.
92 pounds, maybe. She's like,
Right. So I think
that's half her body weight of
yeah,
blood.
realistically, I don't think she would have been able to have such a stab. Um, but
I'm on the side that Nina hallucinated the entire fight with Lily, including the stabbing of herself, that she didn't actually stab herself. And that leads into the scene where Nina gets on top of
Mm-hmm.
the
Platform, yeah.
platform and she dives off as the white swan, where she looks at her mom, looks at the audience.
Yeah.
You could see on camera the reds pooling in her
Costume, yeah.
stomach, her costume, the white costume, very obvious to the camera, and then she dives onto the mattress. It's even bigger. It's
Right.
like taking up
Actually,
half of
yeah,
their
more
costume.
than that even, because she stabbed Lily before she did the Black Swan. So she would have danced like a shit ton, because she would have been like, even if let's say she did not realize she stabbed herself, like it is a real thing that until you realize that you're hurt, you don't feel the pain. I've
Yeah.
experienced that. So I could believe that she'd gone through the Black Swan without realizing. But she has danced like a fuck ton at that point. She would have bled out.
Yeah, well, there are 3 reasons why I wrote down why I don't think she stabbed herself. So one is what you said. She dances 2 full acts as the
Yeah.
lead
Yeah.
while bleeding out. There's
Yeah.
no fucking way she would have had drops of blood.
Yeah.
Also, ballet dancers, like, they're constantly touching your torso area, picking you up. Like,
Right,
the guy
exactly.
would have been like, "Why there like, there's
Yeah,
fucking
there's
blood on
blood
my
on my
hand."
hand.
Like,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
she's doing complex moves that are gyrating and torquing your body in such ways where even if she happened to patch it up or band-aid it, like, it would be like you getting 20 stitches
No,
and
it would
then
bleed
doing,
down
like,
her legs.
pliés
Yeah,
and fouettes, like, it would just rip open completely
absolutely.
and start doing that. The second reason is that if there was really blood at the end when Thomas and the other dancers come over to her on the mattress to congratulate her, I think the other dancers and Thomas would have reacted way sooner than they did because the dancers are gathered around her. At this point, her entire lower torso
And
is covered in blood, and they're like, "Oh my god!" Like everyone's going
it's
crazy.
only Lily and Toma reacting too.
Yeah, the other dancers are just kind of like there
They're just like,
in the
bravo.
background. Imagine you just did an entire ballet and then you go to congratulate your lead and half of her costume is bloodied. That's not part of the play. You immediately, like,
Yeah,
when you were 10 feet away, you would have been like, oh my God, someone call 911. Like, there was a spike under the mattress or like, so, like she fucked
yeah.
herself up on the fall. Like, you wouldn't be standing over her for 10 seconds. And it wouldn't take you, it would take you like half a second to realize that something was wrong. And then the third thing that I realized the second time I watched the scene, you can hear the crowd chanting as the white lights come in to
Mhm.
end the movie. They go from applauding to saying, Nina,
Yeah,
Nina, Nina. And like, that's a sports thing. That's not a
yeah.
ballet thing. I
No,
don't see like Radio City Music Hall
no.
seeing a ballet and chanting the first name of like
That
Nina,
I've been to
Nina.
many
Yeah.
ballets that's never happened. Most
Yeah.
people don't even know the name of the main dancers.
And I think that's a sign at the end that she's still hallucinating.
Yeah.
That Lily's reaction and Tomas' reaction, like, "Oh my God, are you?" And then she goes into the light, and everyone's
Because she
saying,
believes
"Nina,
she's
Nina."
so,
She
yeah.
like, yeah, I think that's a sign that none of it is real at that point with the stabbing or with the
So
blood.
then you could make the argument, did she ever dance that night?
That is the last theory I wanted to get into. So there's a hot take floating around on the internet that assumes that there are different theories. So one is that like the entire dance, the all
Mhm.
3 acts are imagined,
Yeah.
and you could see that as like Lily never really waking up the night
Mhm.
before. Like maybe she goes to a
Nina.
Nina never really waking up. Like she goes into a catatonic
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like psychosis
Yeah.
state
Yeah.
in her bed in her own apartment. The second one that I think is more interesting is you assume Nina actually did stab herself in the fight with Lily. So
Mhm.
assuming that's true, the second and third act are totally hallucinated. It happens in her mind
Yeah.
and she's bleeding out in her dressing room.
Yeah.
The 3 things or 4 things to support that. Number 1, and I noticed this
Oh,
while
and then Toma and Lily actually find her in her dressing room bleeding out, and he's just like, she's like, and then he's like, "What did you do? What did you do?" But
yes,
rather than being on stage.
exactly. So the first thing in the second act, the prince, after dropping Nina, but the prince blames Nina, and he goes like, "What the fuck?" Like you
Yeah.
could see he was mad at her.
She hates herself so much. Yeah.
And the prince stays pretty stone-faced throughout the movie when they're dancing throughout the first act up until the drop. The second act, the prince becomes overly enthusiastic. He says bravo to Nina in the middle of the act. Like
Yeah.
he's like bravo, like
Yeah.
as they're walking off, which I don't see a ballet prince actually doing. Like you stay in character until you're completely off the stage. So that's one thing that I noticed the second time was like, that's a little bit off.
Wait, let me pause you right there. Like, it kind of makes so much sense too, because obviously she has a moment where like she has a freak out or something that messes up the whole thing. She falls. And Lily is again the representation of what she aspires to and like her self-hatred in a way. So like the fact that Lily appeared in her dressing room being like, I'm going to take over now is just a reflection of her being so mad at herself for falling, for messing up,
Yeah.
that Lily appears to basically as her self-loathing self.
Yes. So the prince's demeanor changes drastically. Other people on the stage in the background, they're like, "Oh my God, Nina, like that was amazing." Like,
Yeah.
like the dancers were never this congratulatory
I know.
to her during the movie.
Yeah.
The second thing, people throw flowers on stage after the second act, which is
Yeah.
super strange.
No.
And I was
yeah.
reading in the ballet forums that if you have flowers, it's like it's such a rare, like it has to be the best performance in the history of
So,
ballet to throw flowers on
right.
stage. Otherwise, you're going to the wings to give
I
the
was-
dancers the flowers.
I was gonna say usually like they might be brought flowers, and it usually is it's not the audience because the audience doesn't have a bunch of flowers
Yeah.
just like under their seat to throw, and it's usually when something special happens. So for example, if the principal dancer is named Étoile in France, like one of the greatest, then they'll do something special like this. Well, they'll get flowers, or maybe if it's their last performance, but. And sometimes, yeah, like for some, they still like bring it at the end and stuff. But like I agree, it's very rare, and it will never be after the second act. It's at the very, very end of the show while they're like doing their salute at the end.
The audience goes crazy after the second act. So
Yeah.
there's still one act left, and there's dozens of bouquets thrown on stage.
Yeah.
Super strange. Even the first time we watched this, I was like, that's very strange that they would throw flowers in the middle of the show. That seems like that would never happen. The third thing, after the second act, so going into the third act,
Yeah.
Nina is happy with her Black Swan performance. Nina makes out with Thomas in
Yeah.
front of the other dancers.
Yeah.
Hard and passionately, like
Yeah.
a long makeout, 5+ seconds. None of the other dancers react. No one's
Yeah.
like, what the fuck is going on? Like,
Yeah.
there's like 8 dancers around as Nina and Thomas are just making out passionately on the side stage. And I was like, that's a little bit weird. And then the fourth thing, if you assume that Nina stabbed herself and that the second and third acts are total hallucinations, the white light at the end represents her kind of being brought into the hospital, and like the hospital, because you have the hospital lighting with Beth, like everything's like super bright. It's like her slipping into this catatonic psychosis state in the hospital with her being brought in and the white light shining over her. So she's actually not on the stage. She's on like a hospital room mattress.
Yeah.
And the light is just overwhelming her. It symbolizes her like slipping into a psychotic
I like
state.
this theory.
Yeah.
I would even imagine like potentially what could have happened too is that she did stab herself, passed out. Imagine like in that state of like between like awake and unconscious, she imagined the second act with the Black Swan, and then maybe kind of went back, sort of woke up or came back to like consciousness in a way, realized that she stabbed herself, and maybe like did start prepare her makeup and stuff, and then like passed out again or something like this, and then there was this, and then that's when they discover her and take her to the hospital, maybe something like that.
I think it's either.
I like this theory most, to be honest.
I think it's either the first one we talked about where she doesn't stab herself and she hallucinates the blood and the stabbing, even her mom in the audience, the reaction, and then the weird things we just talked about with the bouquets and making out with
Thomas.
That's a hallucination in her mind. Like it's a combination. Like she's dancing, but she's also
I think it's like a repressed sexuality, feelings maybe towards him or something.
And in the second act, she also actually turns into the Black Swan on stage in her own mind. And then the camera pans around from the audience view and you just see Nina normally. But in her mind, she like transforms into the Black Swan. So I think it could be like both, where she didn't stab herself. She's dancing, but she's also hallucinating all this shit, including the blood at the end
Yeah.
that
It's possible too.
no one notices.
Like, there's definitely wild amounts of hallucination, whether she's actually dancing and hallucinating or semi-unconscious and hallucinating.
And then the one we just talked about where, she gets stabbed. She stabs herself after the first act, and she's just bleeding out in her dressing room, hallucinating, dancing the second and third act. Then Toma and Lily come into her dressing room,
find her,
and are like, what the fuck happened?
Yeah.
I like both of those, but I guess that's why it's such a good movie, is that it's not, it leaves a lot of lines blurred for audience interpretation, which is why you can talk so much about it.
And there's so many different layers of it, and I think he explored the intricacies of the ballet world, the good and the bad, the beautiful and the ugly, and lined it up with mental health, and like the Swan Lake was just the perfect way to do it. I think it's just such an incredible movie for all these reasons.
I think Darren Aronofsky needs to collaborate with the director.
He needs more words.
He needs to collaborate with the director in Train to Busan and make a movie called Train to Black Swan, and it's just a bunch of ballet dancer zombies that try to kill the main
really
actor on the train. Yeah, instead of like running after you and going, they're like trying to fouette you, and if you get hit by a toenail, that turns you into a zombie. So Train to Black Swan, I'm looking for that. Looking forward to that collaboration. Those are my final thoughts on Black Swan.
Well, thank you so much for bringing some of those theories. I didn't think of them, or I'd read about them in particular. Those last one, I think it's opened my eyes to see it differently, and now I kind of want to watch it again, even though it's been a week.
I mean, it was hard to pick which ones to talk about because there are literally hundreds of Black Swan theories.
Every good movies do.
Yeah, and then also rewatching it again with a more analytical eye was cool. Knowing that she does go into this psychotic state, and then looking back for all those signs, it was. I am glad that you kept recommending this movie until we watched it, and I'm happy that we got to talk about it on the podcast. And I
got good taste.
You do. You have great taste. Now you'll have to figure out in this last scene of the episode, does my wife actually stab me, or is that a hallucination that you're watching on YouTube right now? Are you the viewer going into a deep psychosis, or am I actually starting to pool in blood right now here in my midsection? That's up to you.
Are you even talking to me? Do you even have a wife, or are you just talking to yourself in front of the camera?
Yeah, that's true. I could snap my fingers and all of this just fades away right now, and I'm in a straitjacket in some institution talking in a room, and one of the workers is watching me like, damn, this guy talks a lot. It's like he thinks he's talking to authors and scientists and athletes, and he keeps like adjusting a fake microphone that isn't there. He keeps like unwrapping fake wires that don't exist. He like says something about like every Wednesday I have to put it out every Wednesday, and we're like, what the fuck is this guy's insane.
He's the craziest patient in the hospital.
That's also possible. Darren Aronofsky could be directing my life right now.
Oh my God. This is a Truman Show situation.
Yeah. Well, if I had to have someone direct my life, that would be a cool guy to do it. So, I would take the psychosis just for the story. But thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, my lovely wife, for joining me on this Black Swan episode. And
Pleasure.
I'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.